Hello, welcome to 31 Days of Halloween Down the Red Rabbit Hole. My name's Sarah Moorhead and I'm a speculative crime thriller writer, which means I write crime books with a little bit of what if. What if we could read criminals' minds, and what if we could cure psychopathy? So I brought you out today to a little spooky part of my world called Chilwell Village, and as you can see behind me there is an absolutely gorgeous church. It's called All Saints Chilwell. It's been here since the Domesday Book in 1058 at least, and we think it was built in the 900s. It's a beautiful, beautiful church, and it used to belong to the Catholics, but during the time of the Reformation the Anglicans took it over, and that caused some problems. So over here in the church you can see a little building which is a hearse shed. That's really unusual. And there are lots and lots of really ancient graves here. Some of them belong to people who died in World War I and World War II. You can see here a better view of the hearse shed, and you can see that some of the gravestones here are really, really old. Apparently there's a footballer buried here called Jack Sharp who died in 1938. He played for Everton and for England. There's also a poet here called William Watson, Sir William Watson. He caused lots of controversy because he wrote a poem. He was asked to write a poem about the new cathedral in Liverpool so they could raise money. But when he did, instead of writing what they expected, he wrote a poem which criticised the fact that in Liverpool children were starving and yet people were expected to raise money for a huge cathedral. And that's one of the reasons why he never became Poet Laureate. So All Saints is a Grade 1 listed building, and there's burials from the mid-1500s to the end of the 1800s. And over the road is this beautiful pub called the Chilwell Abbey. This was probably built in the 15th century, but was built on top of the remains of an older inn, and it's said to have tunnels running underneath it to various points of exit. And this is because these secret tunnels were there so that the priests during the Reformation could come and say mass. But because Catholics were getting killed at the time, priests were in a lot of danger of being killed, as they shouldn't. It was illegal to say mass. So the tunnels underneath the abbey were said to go from the pub to the church and then all the way to a place called Wavertree, so the priests could come and go and stay hidden away from danger. When I was a kid, my friend Justine, her dad, ran this pub, and the upstairs now is a lovely hotel, but back in the day they were just mainly empty rooms, and sometimes we used to go and play there. We used to hear banging all hours of the night, and the dogs would go mad in certain rooms. So it is a bit spooky and very, very old. I'm not sure I'd want to spend the night there. Now look at this lovely park here. Looks very, very peaceful. But there are stories about this piece of land here having riots during the English Civil War conflicts. And it's believed that Cromwell's army came up and fought with tens of thousands of Catholic northern men and slaughtered them. It's very peaceful these days. This is just down the road from the church. And to the side of this park is this strange little piece of land here that is completely fenced off. And this is known here as the Bloody Acre. So when I was a child, there was rumours in the 80s that people would go to the graveyard, which is just over there, to perform occultic rituals. And one of the reasons might be because of this little piece of land. Doesn't look much, does it? However, this is called the Bloody Acre, and we think that's because back in thousands of years ago, there were Celtic people living here, and this area was used as a temple to the pagan gods, and they used to do blood sacrifices here. So I've come home now so I can tell you a little bit more about the Bloody Acre, as I was feeling a little bit freaked out standing by the land, and also people were walking past with their dogs, and I was talking to myself and filming myself, so I felt a bit daft. The church is obviously medieval, but before that, a couple of thousand years ago, there were Druids who lived here, and the Druids had a temple which was not like a stone building, but more like a mini Stonehenge. They would have had standing stones, and at the centre of those temples there, they would have had human sacrifice, and that's why they think it's called the Bloody Acre, because the ground would have run red with rivers of blood for the sacrifices that they made to the ancient mysterious gods that we don't know anything about anymore. People would be killed for various reasons, offered up to the gods for the weather, to change circumstances, and to influence nature and things like that. It says in the Tom Slemen book about the acre would have been a hallowed ground that soaked up rivers of blood from sacrificial victims, and the Druids, believing in the transmigration of souls, would have thought they were doing their victims a favour by releasing their souls so they could start a clean slate with a new body through reincarnation. The church is not the only place to have been built. Sorry, the land is not the only place to have been built on an ancient temple. They think there's a number of churches in Liverpool that were built on ancient temple sites, and they're connected by ley lines, interestingly enough. And the Liverpool City Council, believe it or not, in 1937 declared that the acre must never be used for agriculture, housing, or in particular for consecrated ground and burials. They said that if this did happen, a terrible curse would fall upon that person, and that's really why they've fenced it off. And I don't know whether it's superstition or what, but it's still fenced off today. So if you ever want to come up to Liverpool and come and visit the Bloody Acre, then do so at your peril. And so just to finish off really the spooky story, just in case you're interested in my book, this one is Witness X. It's about a woman who has designed a machine that can read the minds of witnesses to crimes, but doesn't even just read their minds. She can actually go into that person's mind and experience for herself what they saw and heard in the crime. And at some point she actually goes into the mind of the murderer to see what happened, to find out the truth. The Treatment is a book about a justice system where there's 4 tiers. The first tier is when people, if they're committing crimes because they haven't got any food or anywhere to stay or any clothes, they're really poor, the government will give them those things. The second tier is when people commit crimes because of PTSD and trauma and addiction, and they get sent to a countryside where they go to a lovely farm, like a camp, and they get healed and they get therapy and they get treated. However, the third tier is when people do things just because they're bad, and those people get punished by having chemicals and drugs, and they believe that what they did to other people gets done to them. So it's a real eye for an eye punishment. And then there's another level, which is the 4th level, which you'll have to read the book to find out. In that book, Grace Gunnarsson, who's a psychiatrist who helps people at level 2, she is worried because one of her best friends has been done for a terrible, terrible crime. And if she doesn't help him, he's going to end up either in tier 3 or worse still in tier 4. So she has to try and fix him. And she believes that she's got a cure to psychopathy. And if she can do that, then the courts will let him off. So really, that's all I've got to say for today. I'd like to thank you for being with me here in this dark little hole, and remind you to follow the Red Rabbit on social media. Do subscribe, as it costs nothing and makes a big difference to the podcast, and encourages your usual host, Envy Peacock and Lisa Shepherd, to continue with their mad ramblings on here. You can find my links in the show notes, so you can have a closer look at my books. So sorry if I've stumbled my way through this. I do hope you like the spooky stories around where I live. They always fascinated me as a child, and they've always given me loads of things to think about and imagine. And I hope you have a very spooky Halloween.